Hello and welcome to Law Matters. My name is Michael Conroy and I will be your host as we explore various legal topics that impact the lives of many of us or our friends or families on a daily basis. I'm a partner at Hassett George, a full-service law firm with offices in Simsbury and Glastonbury. I've been in practice for 28 years and my practice is concentrated primarily in the area of civil litigation, handling such matters as personal injury and insurance coverage disputes. On this program, we hope to bring you information that is eye-opening and informative regarding areas of the law that touch many of our lives, but about which there are common misconceptions. Please remember that this program is informational and is not a substitute for legal advice regarding your particular situation. Each individual case is unique, and while we hope to inform and educate you regarding general legal issues, I cannot urge you enough to seek competent legal representation if you are presented with a legal problem. Your rights and financial well-being could depend on it. We welcome your feedback regarding the show. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, or if you would like to request topics to be covered on future episodes, please email us at lawmatters@hgesq.com. Today's topic will be teens, technology, and trouble. From online bullying to sexting to out-of-control group texts, there are a lot of ways teens can get into trouble on the internet. Today we're going to talk about how you can educate your kids on just how much trouble they could get in, and we'll also talk about ways to prevent some of these problems from occurring. My guests today will be Scott Driscoll and Ray Hassett. Scott Driscoll started his law enforcement career in 1988 and served as a youth officer for most of his tenure. In 2003, Scott became a member of the FBI Innocent Images Task Force in New Haven, where he led and assisted in numerous operations involving computer crimes against children. These investigations included undercover online investigations, possession and distribution of child pornography, and other crimes involving child victims. In 2007, Scott started a consulting and education business called Internet Safety Concepts. Scott has presented to thousands of students, parents, religious groups, education administrators, teachers, and the law enforcement community about internet dangers and how to be safe on the internet. Thanks for being here, Scott.
My pleasure.
Our other guest today is attorney Ray Hassett. Ray Hassett is a founding partner of Hassett George. Early in his career, he was a federal prosecutor in Connecticut, where he served as Special Assistant United States Attorney with the Department of Justice. Ray has been in private practice for the last 30 years. He focuses on family law and criminal defense at both the state and federal level. He has been lead counsel in many jury trials over the years, and he is routinely called upon to represent lawyers, judges, and other officials. He has been involved in many cases involving internet crimes. Ray has been named a super lawyer in the area of criminal law by the Thomson Reuters rating service numerous times. Scott and Ray, thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
Now, to start off, Ray, talk to us about basic internet principles. What should kids and parents know?
So I guess the first place we can start, Mike, is we all see kids doing this with their computer or their little phone. And most young people, teens, don't use the phone as a phone, but they use it for a device to communicate. And very often they're using it as a device to communicate either through direct messaging, that can be through Instagram or through TikTok, or they can use Snapchat. What the misconception with young people is that they think once they send the message, it goes away. Similar to, they also use texting, that's very frequently used. With respect to those messages that are sent, there's always going to be a footprint of those messages. It can be located, as Scott's going to tell you. He worked on a number of cases where things thought they were deleted and they really weren't. So what do we need to do? As parents, we need to be vigilant and make sure that we are watching what they're doing, because anything they're sending over this device will be around forever, but it also can constitute a crime, such as threatening, harassing. We'll talk a little bit about bullying today. They also send photographs and things which they shouldn't. Sometimes people self-implicate themselves by sending pictures of themselves in undress. Unfortunately, young people do that, and they're actually violating a number of state and federal crimes by doing that. So what we really need to do, Mike, is focus on how do we keep our technology safe for them to use, and recognizing that they need to be educated on exactly how they're going to violate the law potentially and put themselves into both criminal and civil liability.
So Scott, what do you tell kids about social media and how it should and shouldn't be used?
Well, whenever I have conversations with students, we talk about something Rita said about safe usage. What I try to do is empower the best choices kids can make. I think it's realistic to understand that technology is going to be part of our lives. And if we put our heads in the sand and say it's not going to happen to me or it's not going to happen to my child, that might not be the best education we can give our children. I think students who have these devices in their hands have to understand the power of them. And when used appropriately, it can enhance our lives. It can make research and studying a lot easier. It can communicate with people we know. It could be entertaining, but there's a dark side to it if we don't just kind of slow down. So many times when I talk to students, the impulsivity of a text message. If a child texts somebody and they don't get an answer within a couple seconds, they immediately go into a panic of what's wrong, are they mad at me? Which means now it can grow into and blossom to an out of control communication. Then bring in social media, where like Ray said, we put something on there and we think it might disappear, and a picture might disappear on Snapchat in 10 seconds, when in reality it doesn't. And that can be held against people. There's things called sextortion, where someone might send a dirty picture and someone might keep it and say, hey, send me more. I'm going to share your boss, your parents, all your friends, what you just sent me. There's a lot of things going on that I don't think parents are aware of. So I think the biggest thing with students and families is educate the good and the bad. We teach our kids so many life lessons, but I think when it comes to technology, we lose that because it's intimidating for parents. This is one of the areas of being a parent where our kids might know more than us. They might understand how technology works, but not the safety that goes along with it. When I first got into computers, my kids would be able to tell me how to do things on there, and I learned from them. Then together we learn, but we also learn about the safety and we get stronger as a family. So as we go through, you're going to hear me refer to that a lot. I think we need to give our kids plans for safeties, and one of that ways is getting involved.
Right. And I think that's probably a very common area of concern for parents, is that their kids are so much more advanced than they are, quite often technologically. I think in my situation, I think I turned to my son for tech support by the time he was 10. Now you mentioned, I think it was Snapchat, and certain apps that, you know, maybe the common perception or perhaps misperception is that content disappears. I think I've heard of WhatsApp is another one, but you said it's stuff that stuff doesn't really go away. What do you mean by that?
Well, depending on how we use it. It's not just Snapchat. Snapchat brought disappearing pictures to the forefront, and that's where a lot of people started to join it. But Instagram, in our private messages, we can have entire messages go into what they call vanish mode, and as soon as our child clears the screen, everything's gone. Or it could be on a WhatsApp where we have this false sense of security. What happens is it doesn't always disappear because of things called screenshots, or someone might collect that data, or we don't have our settings set properly where we allow, me and you are having a text message, I allow you to keep it in the chat. What that means is it's permanent on your device until you delete it, if the way I send it to you or our settings aren't set properly. So the misbelief of disappearing is where I think kids fall into a false sense of security. Oh, it's a friend, they'll delete it, when they might not. Right. And I remember being a teenager, I used to fight with my best friends. And if I had something that can humiliate them or embarrass them, that might have been the fuel I used. Well, now that doesn't go away. And that's the unfortunate part of social media, is we think things disappear. And in fact, in a couple of years from now, it could resurface at a time where you're doing a job interview or you're talking and making new friends at a new school. Things can come back to haunt you, not just on a legal way, but just in a life impact way.
Right.
And that leads into bullying too, because the schools are very, very vigilant about making sure that kids do not bully each other. They all have policies as is required by law. But you'll find that it's a constant source of bullying when you look at some of these text messages. Parents may go in and try to look at past text messages, and some of them may have been deleted, and they may not be able to see them. So they may think, okay, everything's good, but in fact, it's not good. And even though they're deleted, we can find them as lawyers. It's a treasure trove for evidence that we use to figure out whether our clients are innocent or may have some issues or concerns about what they've done. I had one case where somebody reported a sexual assault to the police and gave all the text messages that were on this person's phone to the police. When I got my client's phone, I did an entire forensic background. I copied it, and then we looked at it and we matched the missing texts. And the missing texts were clear to the police that what was alleged was actually not accurate, and the case went away. So that was a good use of evidence. Obviously, in a bad use of evidence, you have colleges now looking at some of their social platforms. They can't go and get everything, but they look at it. And a lot of young people forget that. They forget that employers will look at what their past social media postings have been.
Right.
And it's really important for them to understand that they are creating a history for themselves moving forward on their lives that can be used in favor of them, but can also be used against them.
Can I just add something to that?
Sure, sure.
I think one of the things that teenagers need to also realize is who's looking at it. It's not their same age group, their peers that might look at something online and go, oh, that's funny, we've all did that. It might be someone from my generation who doesn't understand the humor, and what they say can be taken in a whole different context. So one I always challenge the kids is, one, set it to private so it limits how much they can see, but also look at it through other people's eyes. If this is read by someone of my age or something else, can it be hurtful? Can it be misunderstood? If it is, take it down or don't post it. Slow down and think before it is, because that is the impact of our words is so powerful.
Sure. And the misunderstanding happens all the time, Mike. You get people that post something that they think's, like Scott said, relatively innocent. You look at it from the perspective of, once the school finds out about it or law enforcement finds out about it, now there's an instant investigation into threatening, harassment, bullying violations, and that can really create difficulties and problems.
Right. Now, you mentioned one instance of sexting, and I think you earlier mentioned that sometimes kids might take a photo of themselves or somebody else and then share that. Tell us, if you would, some of the ramifications of those types of actions.
So the common fact pattern is boy and girl are going out, they send pictures to each other. Of course, then they break up inevitably, and what happens? Well, to either embarrass or to create some humor out of it, the pictures start getting circulated. I remember many years ago when my son was in high school, he received a photograph of someone in another high school that was actually a family friend, and he contacted me. And I contacted the parents, and they were well aware of it because the police had already contacted them. And what happened was this young woman that posted the photograph was under the age of 16. And so when she posted it on herself, her own picture, when she sent it, she distributed then what would be considered child pornography to a third party. He then passed it on, and each person that gets it and passes it on is really distributing child pornography. And technically it's a violation of both state and federal law, and can create a whole bunch of difficulty. But the embarrassment, the concern for all the parties involved is really something that you may never be able to overcome, as well as the potential criminality.
And I guess if you've got 14 or 15-year-old kids doing this kind of thing, they're not thinking about the long-term ramifications.
No, they're not. And it's great we have people like Scott that go out and educate them and tell them this is what you need to be aware of. Otherwise, they end up coming to see me when they've already had some law enforcement involved in their lives.
We have a sexting law in Connecticut that impacts people under the age of 18. And if you're a child and you read it, it can be a little confusing, but the principle of it is, if you're under 16 and you share a picture that's deemed to be child pornography with someone under 18, you, the sharer, and the receiver both face misdemeanor charges. What the children don't understand is if they hit forward, it goes from a misdemeanor to a felony. That law doesn't cover the forward button. So as kids think things are funny, they don't realize the serious consequences of
Right.
just hitting a forward button. That's where I think as parents, we talk to our kids about it ahead of time and let them know what their options are for safety and come up with a plan on that, because that law has been around for a while. And it's not just 13, 14-year-olds. When I go to elementary schools, they have principals there that are concerned about youngsters getting involved in it at that early of an age. So the more education we can give them, the better, I think.
One of the other areas, Mike, that I find that there's a great deal of concern, and rightfully so, is any mention of any weapons, in particular guns, handguns, or rifles. And whenever that's mentioned in a post, and usually this goes out between a large group or a larger group of individuals, somebody raises an eyebrow and gets concerned. One of the young people gets concerned about their safety. They show it to a parent. Typically, they show it both to law enforcement and to the school, and then that escalates it into a much higher level. And there have been times and situations that I've been privy to and I've been involved with, in which, rightfully so, because there was concern. I had a young 16-year-old that actually manufactured a ghost gun. A ghost gun is a 3D printer ghost gun. It was a 9mm that actually worked.
Wow.
And thankfully, there was somebody that said something on Instagram questioning that, and it went to the administration of the school, got the police involved, and they did, in fact, conduct a search warrant and obtain a gun. So sometimes the conversations are good when people young people are looking at it and they're saying, we need to be aware of this, and now it raises a new level. But imagine all the times that it doesn't get to that level, and imagine all the problems that we could avoid. So one of the, as Scott indicated, communication between teenager, young person, and parent, or people in authority, if they're just taught and educated that that's the best way to handle something like this, I think that'll create a lot of safety in the future.
And what are some tips for parents to have those conversations with their kids about how to stay safe on the internet and social media?
We talk to our kids about so much. Our children come home almost every day from school. How was school today? And we usually get the typical teenager, nothing really happened.
Right.
We'll take that and dovetail on, okay, well, I heard some things are going on Instagram. Talk to me about Instagram. Share some thoughts. Develop a plan with them. I think especially when it comes to weapons and everything, I think parents need to really change our definition of a word. Our kids don't want to tell because they don't want to be a snitch. I take that word and I say, you're a hero. If somebody's in trouble or someone needs help, just saying, Mom, Dad, can you take a look at this? If we don't give our kids that plan ahead of time and they see something, they might not know where to go with it. They might think their first instinct is I should talk to my classmates about it. But if we as parents talk to our kids ahead of time going, no matter what it is, come show us. As a family, we'll learn on it, we'll get stronger. But if someone needs help, we'll help them. Then if our kids experience it, their first thought is, I got to show Mom or Dad because we've already laid the foundation down. Letting our kids have a plan for safety, I think, is important. So even though it might not be an easy topic, I remember having the sex talk with my child. It wasn't easy. But they also knew by the time they were done, come to me and we'll answer it. I think we have to embed in our kids, they have a plan for safety.
And also, the schools are doing a really good job of utilizing their resource officers. And the resource officers are, for the most part, either retired police officers or off-duty police officers that work security in the schools to provide safety to the students. They're a really good resource. And again, it looks like you're snitching, but in fact, it's preserving safety, and that's what needs to be repeated to these young people and these students so that they can, in fact, participate in the manner of trying to make the schools a safer place and to protect their friends, more importantly, because not everything happens in schools, so they really do have to be aware of the fact that these are resources that are out there that they should use.
The way I break it down for kids is a snitch tries to get someone into trouble or get themselves out of trouble. A hero says, something doesn't seem right. What can we do? And it's as simple as that. You say that to the right person and good things can happen at that point.
That's a good approach. Now, what are some tips for people out there to help make their own social media accounts more secure or their children's?
First and foremost is privacy. I think setting our accounts to private, going through the settings, but also limiting who we're friends with. I get follow requests from people I went to high school with a lot. I didn't like them then. I don't like them now. Where we've been out of high school for 30 years together, we're strangers. So I wish them nothing but the best. I got no ill will, but if I'm going to share something about my kids, I don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. So starting to really gain control over it, but learning about it. They update our apps all the time, and we don't have to download every single app that's out there when we hear about it. Give it time to figure out and see if it's going to stay around. The less we share is better. I really do believe that. I know it sounds corny, but less is more. And the less information we share allows us to stay safe and keep control over our digital, what I call our digital tattoo, what people can find about us.
And how do we impart that to our kids who, they on Instagram or whatever they use, they're friends of their friends of their friends?
Well, parenting's not easy. Sometimes it could just be this is our house rule. Or there could be times where you work on it together, sit down. I know on my website I have safety guides and contracts that family can use to start the conversation. Mm-hmm. If a parent doesn't know about the app, the first thing they should be saying is, let me research it. Let me look into it, see if it's right for our family, not for your age, not for your friends. Is it right for what we believe in? And then take it from there and work together on it. Okay.
Now, Ray, I know that you sometimes receive calls from people that are asking how they can get negative posts or information about them taken down from the internet or a social media site. Can you tell us about some of those?
Sure. I get regular phone calls, as you've indicated, from people who feel like they've been defamed or that there's information out on the internet that's inaccurate or is misleading. And there are most of the major internet providers will allow you to contact them. Some of them, for example, Google, Facebook, they have their own general counsel. And you can really Google how to remove these items and who to contact and who directly to contact. So they kind of make it easy for you to do it in that respect. Some of the smaller ones may not have a direct. So very often I've gotten, I've been retained rather to send a letter to them and ask them to immediately take it down. Otherwise it would be continued defamation and they could be held liable for it. It's somewhat of a threat, but it typically works. There are also companies and entities out there that if you want to suppress information about you, in other words, you can't eliminate it from from media posts that are on the internet and readily accessible. You retain one of these companies, and they will help you suppress it. In other words, push it down so far that it will take people an awful long time to find it. That's usually where someone's arrested for something, and it was in the media, and they want to get it suppressed, or something came out that suggested that they did something wrong. But the first thing to do is to analyze what the platform is that you're using, find out who's the best person on that platform, doing a little bit of research, or retaining an attorney to assist you, and then we'll take it from there and contact them and say you got to remove this stuff for whatever reason they want to identify.
Okay. So what are just in general, what are some of the best tips that you can offer people out there for preventing these problems with, be it sexting or cyberbullying?
Well, I think one of the things is, one, as parents, we lead by example. We talk a lot about cyberbullying with kids, but adults do it just as much. We hide behind our monitors, and we go onto town forums, and we just say things that just come to us because it's a keyboard. It's a monitor. We have to realize that our words have an impact. So I think leading by example, but having a plan, talking to our children ahead of time about it. The families that have been successful with what I've dealt with on either cases or through my education or consulting, they have come up with a plan. They've made mistakes. We all have. But they build on it, get stronger, and they learn how to prevent things. So gaining control, limit how much we share. And I think for parents, we need to get involved and learn.
Scott, you have an interesting thing too. You have a contract. Tell Mike about the contract that you use.
Yeah, the contract is one side is for parents, one side is for kids. And no matter if you're just starting into social media and technology or you've been using it for a long time, you sit down and you come up with things that you agree on. Like, I'm not going to have any hidden apps. I'm not going to use apps that will hide technology on my device. That's some of the promises the kids make. On the flip side, the parents will say, if you come to me and want a new app, I'll research it, we'll learn it, and we make decisions together. Both parties sign it, you fold it up, put it in an envelope, hopefully you never need it. But if something does go wrong, you can come back and say, listen, where times were good, things were common, we want it to be safe, we all agreed on this. You have violated the contract, here are the consequences we laid out, whether it's take away a phone, whatever it is. It starts the communication, and I think that's the biggest thing is we learn and we communicate with our kids about it. It's not going away. It's going to be here, where if we empower our kids to be as safe as possible, and the sooner we do that, they will develop the good skills and use it for what it should be.
What a great way to start the conversation going with your kids, especially at a young age when they're just getting phones or they're starting to use their phones more often. They want to have that freedom, and you can have them participate in making an agreement with you, and you can remind them of that. And I think that's a wonderful idea. Great tool.
And there's monitoring softwares out there at the younger kids. You can say, okay, if you want to build up my trust, we're going to monitor it through this program. And as you get older, we can take some of those things off, and you can have the freedom you're looking for, but it's something you have to earn, and we got to work on together.
That's great advice. Good stuff. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. This has been very interesting. This is a very kind of scary area. But I think the more we communicate with our children, the better off we are. But that's it. We're out of time for today. We hope you found the show helpful and informative. The internet can be a scary place, but there's a lot we can do to keep our teens and ourselves safe and out of trouble. Again, this program is intended for informational purposes and is not a substitute for legal advice regarding your particular situation. Each individual case is unique, and while we hope to inform and educate you regarding general legal issues, I cannot urge you strong enough to seek competent legal representation if you are presented with a legal problem. Your rights and financial well-being could depend on it. From all of us at Law Matters, thanks for watching, and please tune in next time.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.